April 3rd, 2026. Dallas, Texas. 51 points. Not in a video game. Not in a scrimmage. In a real NBA game against real NBA defenders at 19 years old. When Cooper Flagg walked off that court, he had just become the youngest player in the history of professional basketball to score 50 points in a single game. A record that stood for decades gone. Just like that. The crowd was still screaming his name during the national anthem the way they always do now, that our flag was still there. But Dallas lost. 138 to 127. And somewhere inside that contradiction, the record, the loss, the roar of a crowd cheering for a teenager bumping was quietly ticking. A clock, built into the fine print of his contract. Depending on what happens next, that clock could cost Cooper Flagg $300 million. This is the time bomb nobody's talking about. In Newport, Maine, life has a way of following a predictable, time-worn rhythm. In a town of just 3,100 people, a kid's future is usually written in the hulls of lobster boats, the local classrooms, or the stories of short-lived high school basketball glory they'll retell for decades. But Cooper Flagg was never part of that rhythm. From the very beginning, Cooper was a total outlier against the cold, quiet backdrop of rural Maine. While he possessed a pure basketball pedigree, his parents were mainstays at the University of Maine. What Cooper displayed on the court went far beyond being a legacy player. He didn't just play the game, he dismantled it with a level of composure that was almost haunting. As a freshman at Nokomis Regional, Cooper started putting up the kind of numbers you usually only see in a video game: 20.5 points, 10 rebounds, 6.2 assists, 3.7 steals, and 3.7 blocks per game. The sheer absurdity of his dominance peaked in the state championship game. He scored 22 points on his own, while the entire opposing team managed only 27. At that point, he wasn't just a talented high school kid anymore. He was a statement of intent. Coming from a town the NBA radar had never even touched. Cooper Flagg had managed to generate his own orbit. He didn't wait for opportunity to knock. He shattered the boundaries of Newport to introduce himself to the world. Scouts began to swarm. The phones wouldn't stop ringing. Cooper then made the first in a series of calculated high-stakes moves by reclassifying. He skipped a year of high school to head straight to Montverde Academy in Florida, the legendary superstar factory that produced top picks like Joel Embiid and Cade Cunningham. Cooper walked into that house of giants with a singular mindset he knew he was born to be at the top. Then came Duke. It only took one season for Cooper to secure the Wooden Award, becoming just the fourth freshman in history to do so, joining icons like Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis, and Zion Williamson. He led the Blue Devils in every major statistical category: points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. At just 18 years old, Cooper was doing things the college basketball system simply wasn't built to handle. The defining trait of Cooper Flagg isn't the highlight reel dunks or the trophy case. It's his sense of precocious urgency. He is always ahead of schedule. He jumped grades to get to college early, dominated Duke faster than anyone expected, and shattered records before he was even legally an adult. The only question left that no one had time to ask was what happens when the professional world isn't ready for someone who always arrives early. The answer to that was already waiting for him in Dallas. May 12, 2025. Chicago. Inside a hotel room at the Marriott Marquis, Cooper Flagg sat with his family, his father Ralph, his mother Kelly, his twin brother Ace, and talked about the future. 30 minutes, just the four of them, before heading out to the NBA draft lottery. They knew the odds. The Dallas Mavericks had a 1.8% chance of landing the #1 pick. Flagg's most likely destinations were Washington, Utah, or Charlotte teams that had been losing on purpose all season, specifically to draft him. Then the envelopes opened. Dallas jumped from 11th to 1st, tied for the biggest single-night move in lottery history. A 1.8% chance pulled off in front of a live audience. In the Mavericks' war room, the reaction was complicated. This was the same franchise that 3 months earlier had traded Luka Dončić, their 5-time All-NBA superstar, their franchise cornerstone, the player they had built everything around for 7 years, to the Los Angeles Lakers. The official reason: conditioning issues. The real reason, according to ESPN's Tim McMahon, they were terrified of a supermax commitment. Dallas had just burned down their house, and the lottery handed them the best possible lumber to rebuild. General manager Nico Harrison, still hearing "Fire Nico" chants from his own fan base, called it a generational talent, a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Draft night, June 25th. Barclays Center, New York. Cooper Flagg, flanked by his family, heard his name called first. "It's a dream come true," he said. "I wouldn't want to share it with anybody else." He signed his rookie contract 8 days later. 4 years. $62.7 million. Then he went to work. October 22nd, NBA debut. 10 points, 10 rebounds. November 10th tied LeBron James as youngest player to score 25 points in a game. 18 years, 324 days old. November 28th, youngest player in NBA history to record 10 assists in a single game. November 29th, 35 points against the Clippers. December 15th, 42 points against Utah. Youngest player in NBA history to score 40 points in a game 94 days younger than LeBron's previous record. December 25th, 27 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists on Christmas Day. Only the third rookie to do that in a Christmas game after Oscar Robertson in 1960 and Pete Maravich in 1970. January 29th, 49 points against Charlotte. New record, most points ever scored by a teenager in NBA history. April 3rd, 51. Each milestone arrived before anyone expected it. Each record fell to someone who wasn't supposed to be ready yet. The city of Dallas, still raw from watching Luka walk out the door, found something new to believe in. But while Flagg was rewriting the record books, something else was being written. Quietly, in the fine print. And it had been there since the day he signed. Here's what most people don't understand about that $62.7 million contract. It isn't the destination, it's the waiting room. Cooper Flagg in his first NBA season earns $13.8 million. That sounds like a lot of money, and by any ordinary standard it is. But P.J. Washington, his own teammate, earns $14.1 million this season. A solid role player, a good professional, not a generational talent, not the youngest player in NBA history to score 50 points. The NBA's rookie salary scale is designed exactly this way. The collective bargaining agreement deliberately underpays first overall picks during their first 4 years to protect team parity, to keep small market franchises competitive, to prevent the league from becoming a financial arms race from day one. The system works. For the league. For the player, it means 4 years of creating hundreds of millions in franchise value while earning a fraction of what that value is worth. But the CBA has a backdoor, an expensive one. It's called the supermax. And here's how the math works. After Flagg's rookie deal expires in 2029, he becomes eligible to sign a 5-year extension worth 30% of the salary cap. Based on current projections, that number lands around $359 million. Then, 5 years after that, a second extension, 35% of the cap. approximately $509 million. Total potential earnings across both extensions, $930 million. He would be 31 years old. According to Spotrac, LeBron James, the highest-earning player in NBA history, has accumulated $528 million in career NBA salary. Flagg's projected path clears that number before his prime years are over. But there is one word buried inside every single one of those projections, one word that changes everything: eligible. To qualify for the 30% supermax, Flagg must meet performance thresholds: All-NBA selection, MVP, or Defensive Player of the Year. Given what he's already doing at 19, those feel achievable. Difficult, but achievable. What nobody puts in the headline is the other condition, the one that has nothing to do with performance. To receive the supermax, a player must remain with the team that drafted him. One trade regardless of whose decision it was, regardless of the circumstances, and the eligibility disappears. Not reduced, not delayed, gone. We don't have to imagine what that looks like. We already watched it happen, right here, in Dallas. Luka Dončić spent 7 years building this franchise, 5 All-NBA selections, a finals appearance, the kind of career that earns a player the right to name his price. And he had named it. According to ESPN's Bobby Marks, Dončić was fully eligible for a 5-year, $345 million supermax extension, the largest contract in NBA history at that point. Dallas knew it. The league knew it. His camp knew it. Then, on February 2nd, 2025, the Mavericks traded him to the Lakers. Overnight, $116 million vanished. Not because Luka played poorly, not because he got hurt, because a trade happened, and under the rules of the CBA, that was enough. Spotrac confirmed it immediately. Dončić dropped from a $345 million supermax to a $229 million extension, the largest single-night financial loss in NBA contract history, caused entirely by the decision of a front office, not the player. And here is the detail that should make every Dallas fan deeply uncomfortable. After the trade was completed, Mavericks GM Nico Harrison confirmed that the looming supermax had played a role in the decision. ESPN's Tim McMahon said it plainly. They were terrified of a supermax commitment. The same Nico Harrison, the same front office, now holding Cooper Flagg's future. Let's break down exactly why this isn't paranoia. The Dallas Mavericks currently control one of their own first-round draft picks between now and 2031. 1. The rest were surrendered in years of aggressive win-now trades built around Luka. Trades that happened before the very trade that ended the Luka era. The roster around Flagg today: Anthony Davis, 31 years old, injured. Kyrie Irving, 33 years old, injured for most of this season. Klay Thompson, 35. Veterans on the back end of their careers signed to provide a bridge while Flagg develops. But bridges don't last forever, and when those contracts expire, Dallas will need to rebuild around their franchise player with almost no draft capital to do it. The cruel irony of this situation: the Mavericks need Flagg to carry them, but the more he carries a broken roster alone, the harder it becomes for him to post the kind of numbers, efficient winning culture numbers, that all NBA voters reward. And without all NBA selections, the supermax disappears. The worse Dallas builds around him, the less likely he gets paid what he deserves. That is the trap, built into the system, hiding in plain sight. And the last time this franchise stood at this exact intersection, a young superstar, a supermax looming, a front office uncertain about committing history, already recorded what they did. Nobody is saying Cooper Flagg is going to fail. That's not what this is about. What this is about is a very specific set of conditions, already in motion, already documented, already visible to anyone paying attention, that could detonate the time bomb before Flagg ever reaches the window he's been building toward. There are 4 of them. The first is performance. All NBA selection sounds straightforward for someone averaging 20.6 rebounds and 4 assists as a teenager. But the forward position in the modern NBA is arguably the most competitive real estate in the league. Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jason Tatum, LeBron James, Paul George, Scotty Barnes. Every season, legitimate superstars get left off the All-NBA teams entirely, not because they played poorly, but because the position is that crowded. Flagg needs consistent All-NBA selections between now and 2029 to guarantee supermax eligibility. That means no significant injuries, no extended shooting slumps, no seasons where the narrative shifts. One lost year, and the window tightens in ways that are very difficult to reopen. He is 19. The human body is 19. These things happen. The second is the roster. Dallas won 1.8% of a lottery and called it a rebuild. But the team around Flagg tells a different story. Anthony Davis, 31, injured for stretches of this season. Kyrie Irving, 33, has played 7 games before being shut down for further surgery on a foot that has now broken twice. Klay Thompson, 35, asking to be something he no longer is. This is not a roster being built around a 19-year-old's prime. This is a roster being managed around a 19-year-old's development while aging veterans collect paychecks. According to analysis from Mavs Moneyball, Dallas controls exactly one of their own first-round picks before 2031. 1 pick across 6 drafts to build the supporting cast that determines whether Flagg qualifies for the contract he's earned. The math does not work, and everyone inside the organization knows it. The third is the front office. In 2029, Cooper Flagg will be eligible for $359 million. That is the number Dallas will be asked to commit to, not hypothetically actually commit in writing for 5 years. The last time this franchise faced that question, they answered it by trading the player instead. Nico Harrison has since acknowledged the supermax factored into the Luka decision. Patrick Dumont, the Mavericks governor, has called Flagg a gift and declared him untouchable. These are encouraging words. They are also nearly word for word what Dallas said about Luka Dončić in the years before February 2nd, 2025. Words are not contracts. And Dallas has recent specific documented history of choosing one over the other. The fourth is the one nobody wants to say out loud. The supermax was designed to keep franchise players with the teams that developed them. A financial incentive so large it overrides almost any other consideration. Stay, get paid, simple. But the mechanism cuts both ways. If Flagg reaches 2029 and Dallas hesitates, if the front office recalculates, if the roster situation looks bleak, if the conversations behind closed doors start sounding familiar, Flagg will have options that most players never get. A player who believes a trade is coming can begin quietly to make himself less attractive for the extension. Softer performances, injury management, subtle signals to the market that he is open to a change of scenery. It has happened before. It will happen again. The supermax in these situations stops being a golden handcuff and starts being a negotiating weapon. The clock doesn't just tick for Cooper Flagg, it ticks for Dallas too. Let's step back from the numbers for a moment, because this story isn't really about $359 million, or $509 million, or the $930 million that sits at the end of a very specific, very fragile road. This story is about what happens when a system built for averages encounters someone who isn't average. and what the system does by design, not by accident, when that happens. The NBA's rookie scale exists for legitimate reasons. Without it, wealthy franchises would simply outbid everyone for the best young players before they'd played a single professional minute. The salary structure creates competitive balance. It protects small markets. It keeps the league from becoming a pure financial meritocracy, where the richest teams win every draft. These are real arguments. They hold up. But here is what the system also does. In Cooper Flagg's first NBA season, he has shattered records set by Oscar Robertson, Pete Maravich, LeBron James, and Brandon Jennings. He has carried a broken roster through a season where his two highest-paid teammates missed a combined majority of games. He has done this at 19 years old, generating franchise value that industry analysts cannot yet fully calculate. Ticket sales, merchandise, television ratings, a city's renewed belief in a team that 12 months ago traded away its soul. For this, he earns $13.8 million. P.J. Washington earns $14.1 million. The system is working exactly as designed. Here is the paradox nobody in Dallas wants to examine too closely. The Mavericks need Flagg to win games now, to justify the veterans to sell tickets to maintain the illusion of competitiveness, while the rebuild quietly happens around him. So they ask him to carry the offense, to guard the opponent's best player, to be at 19 what most players aren't until 25. But all NBA voters don't reward carrying. They reward winning. They reward efficient numbers on good teams surrounded by players who make the star's job easier rather than harder. The more Dallas leans on Flagg, the harder his path to All-NBA becomes. The harder his path to All-NBA becomes, the further the supermax recedes. And the further the supermax recedes, the more likely this ends the way the last one did. The worse they build around him, the less he gets paid. That is not bad luck. That is the architecture of the trap. And then there is the ghost. Luka Dončić didn't leave Dallas because he wanted to. He didn't fail. He didn't self-destruct. He played at an All-NBA level for 7 consecutive seasons, led his team to a finals appearance, and became one of the 10 best players on the planet. And it still happened. The Mavericks didn't trade him because he was declining. They traded him by their own admission because the contract scared them, because $345 million felt like a number they couldn't say yes to, even for someone who had earned the right to ask for it. Cooper Flagg has watched this from the inside. He arrived in Dallas 8 months after that trade. He inherited the locker room, the fan base, the expectation. He is 20 years away from Luka's age when it happened. The question isn't whether Flagg understood what he was walking into. The question is whether Dallas has understood what they did and whether understanding it is enough to stop them from doing it again. LeBron James, the highest-earning player in NBA history, accumulated $528 million across a 22-year career. Cooper Flagg's projected contract path, if everything goes right, clears that number before his 32nd birthday. But the phrase, "if everything goes right," is doing enormous work in that sentence. Everything going right means no serious injuries across the next decade. It means all NBA selections in a forward class that includes generational competition. It means a front office choosing differently than it chose before. It means a system that was never designed for someone like Cooper Flagg, somehow making room for him anyway. These are not guarantees. They are conditions. And conditions, by definition, can fail. So what is Cooper Flagg's time bomb really? It isn't a story about a player who might fail. The 51 points answered that. It isn't a story about greed, a teenager chasing a number with too many zeros. The system built those numbers. He didn't invent them. It's a story about a 19-year-old kid from Newport, Maine. Population 3,100, who arrived early to everything, outgrew every room he walked into, and is now sitting inside a contract, inside a franchise, inside a system that was never quite built for someone like him. The clock is ticking. For Flagg, 4 years to prove what he's already proving, to the satisfaction of voters and executives, and a salary cap formula written by lawyers he will never meet. For Dallas, 4 years to build something real around him, with one draft pick and a front office that has already answered this question once before. We know what that answer was. Tonight in American Airlines Center, they still chant his name during the anthem. That our Flagg was still there. He is. For now. The question has always been the same for the franchise, for the system, for anyone watching a 19-year-old rewrite history in a losing effort. How long